I'm going to speak a little bit about gameness. It's a subject I've talked about before. It's something that comes up all the time. You know, everybody has their interpretation of what the term means. And for the most part, when we see displays of gameness, you know, that's what really uh, excited me and made me a big fan of boxing because of the heart that the fighters showed. We can all appreciate the skill, knockout power, boxing ability, speed and power, and all these footwork and head movement, bobbing and weaving, and all the things involved with boxing. But when it gets down to it, eventually somebody's going to get hit. How they react to that and what they do about it, uh, that's what concerned me the most. That's what made me respect fighters. Not not so much only their record matters or their record of opponents, but their behavior in the ring when things aren't going their way. Now within that, speaking of skill and power and all these other factors, another thing that impressed me was uh, a finisher, a boxer's instincts to finish an opponent when they have them hurt. Not all people, not all boxers can recognize that, and nor do they respond to it. The ones that do, to me, are at the top end of the spectrum. They have that killer instinct without having the thought of really wanting to kill their opponent. That's why, you know, they use a killer instinct as a you know, it's used as an expression, but the what's more accurate is the finishing aspect of it, a finisher. Because the quicker you finish, the quicker you get out of that ring. Well, it's the same thing with the dogs. So, in my interpretation, the finish is part of that gameness. It doesn't mean a game dog is a finisher. It doesn't mean a finisher is a game dog. That's what's unique about the breed. All these different traits, they can be connected to each other or they can be separate from each other as well. Meaning just that. A dog can be game as hell, never stops scratching, keeps going, never gives up, never quits, but doesn't finish his opponent. You can have dogs that are finishers, killers, whatever you want to call them. I'm speaking of the past. And like always, everything I speak about is in the past. Nothing's intended or meant for any illegal purposes. And this is just try to get an understanding of the mindset of these individuals that are competing in certain sports, both human and animal sports. So a finisher can be a killer. That doesn't mean he's game. That doesn't mean he won't quit. What I tried to get with my breeding program is both. Dogs that were finishers that wouldn't quit. And I had several of them. Some of them won, some of them lost. Clayton Blood was that way. 2 hours and 43 minutes, got his lungs punctured, never thought once of quitting. And when he did get his opponent down, even though he didn't have much of a mouth, he went to the throat trying to finish him. And he ended up expiring after his show, but he scratched last. Mr. Rowdy, 2 broken front legs, all the flesh removed from one side of his face, still scratched, never even thought of quitting. Finally was unconscious, and I just picked him up. He barely survived. Same thing with Big Red, in shock, still going, and picked up and saved. There's been a ton of other ones. Willie Boy against Oregon, he went all the way to the end, would not quit. A lot of the white dogs were that way. Shorty lost in 2 hours and 40 minutes to Chainsaws Joey, or no, Magnum 357, would not quit. And there's been some killers that were the same way. I consider Oregon a finisher that had no quit in him. Bill had no quit in him and would go to finish an opponent in the throat, chest, like that, even though he didn't have a lot of mouth. That's why I like my dogs finishing in the throat, because you don't need a lot of mouth. You don't have to be a hard mouth dog to do it. But they have that finishing killer instinct of going to the throat. Bill was that way. Cat and Company's grand champion Jinx was that way, an expert throat fighter. So as I mentioned, everybody has their interpretation of what gameness is. And certainly the first thought in somebody's head is when you're behind, when you're beaten up, tired, hurt, overheated, you don't quit. And it's a rare commodity. Not every dog will do that. And some will not quit under certain circumstances, but will quit under other circumstances, meaning they might not quit from pain, but they'll quit from being overheated, or they'll quit from being fatigued, or they won't quit from being fatigued, but they'll quit from pain. So it's a broad spectrum, and that's why it's always coming up in topics and posts and conversations. But like I said before, once you know what gameness is, you don't question it. If you don't know what it is, you're going to search your whole life for it and you'll never find it. So you can't expect too much from dogs and humans, because they're human beings and they're flesh and blood mammals, dogs are. But it's extraordinary that the limits, what these dogs will go through and not quit. So here's a little excerpt of me having a conversation about the term gameness.
They don't quit. So my interpretation is a little bit different, and I learned this from an older guy, and it was basically the will to finish an opponent regardless of the circumstances. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if you're ahead, behind, rattled, shaken, hurt, on top, on the bottom, whatever. I don't care what the circumstances are. What should be in my dog's thought is forever and always trying to finish the opponent. Mm-hmm. That's my interpretation of it. People will argue and this and that, because most of the time people, when they think of gameness, it's when you're hurt or you're tired or something like that, right? Right. Which that's true, but that's not all there is to it. Right. Oh, gotcha. So let's get off into this book.
So that's a little excerpt I did for a podcast. And like I said, everybody has their interpretation. This is going to be another one of those short videos. I'm going to do more of them as time allows, because I've just been very busy lately with family. But feel free to put your input in, what you think of it. It's okay to disagree. And even though my interpretation was borrowed from Frank Shy, I could really relate to it, and it made sense to me. The better sense, anyways. But again, it's that those come from behind wins, those taking that punishment and never giving up. That's generally most people's interpretation. And like I said in this short clip, that's part of it. It is. But if you've watched boxing for any length of time, or you were involved with the breed for any length of time back in the day, it's also that will to finish their opponent, never giving up. Because with people and with dogs, once your opponent sees that, in a lot of cases, they'll quit, even if they're on top. That's why, sometimes you see these dogs on top, winning, got the opponent busted up, and they just walk away. They just give it up. And at least in my opinion, it's because they see their opponent isn't going to give up, so they do. And in their mind, they did everything they could. This guy, or whatever it is, dog or female is not going to quit. So they hang it up. It's an instinct for survival. And those dogs, even if they're on top and they're hurt, but they don't quit, they don't have that instinct for survival. Same thing for the ones that are hurt and rattled and beat up, going into shock. They don't have that self-preservation. That's gameness. And they don't quit. Because in their mind, they're winning and they're going to get you no matter what. So let me know what you think. Thanks for listening again. More on the way.